Good evening. Would the Duke City Council meeting please come to order? It is September 11, 2014. The time is a couple minutes after 7. We are accepting Councilor Anderson here shortly. Mr. Hilden, could we have a roll call, please?
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor Rebecca Reed.
Here.
Council President Jamie Mills.
Here.
Councilor Ed Scarberry.
Here.
Councilor Marie Sanders.
I am here.
Councilor Duke Wells.
I'm here.
And Councilor Sheldon Meyer.
Present.
And let the record show that as of this moment, Councilor Dick Anderson is not present.
Okay. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, and afterwards I'd like to observe a moment of silence for September 11th, Patriots Day today. All right? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. Councilors, I'll entertain a motion to amend tonight's agenda to have Mr. McCorkle move forward, if that's...
So moved, yes, I'd like to see him moved up on the agenda, up above citizen input.
All right, how about if we put them right after announcements, agenda item 6? Okay, we'll call it 6B. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Say no. Okay, the motion carries. I'll now call for a motion to approve tonight's agenda as amended.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve tonight's amended agenda. Any questions, councilors? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. All right, moving forward. I'll entertain a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda.
Mayor Reedy,
Yes.
I was not present at last month's meeting. I have not viewed the video, so I have to abstain from any action on the minutes, but I would like to vote on the receipts of the session and bills of the session. What's your pleasure?
Well, we'll have to remove those from the consent agenda. Let's add them. Where should we put those, Fred?
Right at the end. I would just put them right at the end. I would just split off the minutes and request a motion first to approve the minutes and then request a second motion to approve bills and receipts.
Okay. All right. I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the August 14th meeting.
So moved.
It's been moved to second that we approve the minutes of the August 14th meeting. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Any opposed, say no. All right, motion carries.
I abstain.
Okay. Bills of the session, I'll entertain a motion to approve the bills and receipts of the session as presented. I need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All right, thank you. Any discussion?
Yes, ma'am.
Councilor Mills?
I have to say things while they're on my mind. I know that we received funding from Best in the West. Do we need to start putting them on the agenda in the future? Is it time? Or
For funding, or you mean just for
just to add
discussion?
the triathlon onto the agenda like we usually do?
Yeah, that's a great idea. Why don't we do that?
Okay, I'm sorry. That's the only.
That's good. Okay, any further discussion on receipts and bills of the session? Councilor, you got some discussion about that?
No, I just wasn't here for the minutes. I couldn't have time.
Oh, okay, all right. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Hearing none, they now pass. Very good. Announcements. Well, I'm going to announce that Councilor Anderson has a second great-grandchild,
And this one's a girl, and her name is Lila Mae Mitchell, except I don't know her birth date. So it was within the last 10 days. So when he comes, he can tell us that. So congratulations to the Mitchells. Election filing closed on August 26th with Duke Wells, Sheldon Meyer filing for City Council, and Rebecca Reedy filing for Mayor. Volunteers are needed to fill 1 planning commission opening, 1 road commission opening, 3 budget committee openings, and 1 park and recreation committee opening. We also are in need of a water tester for Silkus Lake. Dune City Artist of the Month are students from Sayusla High School and a Dune City resident, Dawn Derland. Thank you, and we very much admire the artwork around the room this evening. Moving on to agenda item B, we will call Mr. former Mayor McCorkle, Mayor of Florence.
Of that
Yeah.
evil city to the north.
And then he is a member of the Oregon Community Foundation, and he's going to give a little presentation. And should I come down there, or should I come down there, or are you going to talk first?
I'm going to talk first.
All right, very good.
So, thank you. I'm here on behalf of the Oregon Community Foundation. I serve on the Southern Willamette Leadership Council. He's used to being defined. Southern Willamette Leadership Council, the state is divided into several of these councils, and so they try to get us all involved. And fortunately, I'm the one locally here that this is my 4th little grant presentation in the last 6 months, so or 9 months. So that's always neat. It's always great to give away other people's money rather than your own. A little about OCF. Oregon Community Foundation was established 40 years ago, so this is our 40th anniversary year, which is part of the reason for these grants that you're going to receive. And piggybacking a little bit, coincidentally, it is also the 40th anniversary for our own Western Lane Community Foundation. Whereas the Western Lane Community Foundation started with a little over $3,000, OCF started with about $63,000. Theirs is statewide, ours is obviously local here in Western Lane County. Whereas locally we've grown at this point to almost $5.6 million. OCF is a $1.6 billion foundation. They're one of the top 5 in the country for their size and what they do as a foundation. Whereas locally we feel very good about giving away almost $250,000 every year from the endowment proceeds. They give away about $63 million a year. You know, size and scale of what you're dealing with. We have about 4 dozen different accounts. They have over 1,800. But putting that in perspective, there's a lot more accounts they handle because from their perspective, Western Lane Community Foundation is one account. And all of our funds are what they refer to as sub-funds. So we're only one of their 1,800, even though we have a lot of that. Most of their endowment funds, like ours, are individual funds. They're not organizational funds. There aren't a lot of foundations like ourselves that then invest in another foundation. But locally, the people who started the Western Lane felt back in the 90s that it was getting too much to try and handle with a non-professional group. So they aligned themselves with Oregon Community Foundation, and as a result, they do very well. This last year, their investments returned in excess of 10%. And so I'd love to have money at 10%, but nonetheless, that's not where we are. So anyway, they give a lot of money, their endowments, for all kinds of nonprofits. Just like we do locally, it goes to nonprofits and scholarships. Theirs goes to nonprofits and scholarships. And just as locally, a good chunk of our money is predetermined by the people who set up the endowment fund. They said, this is where I want the annual distribution to go. That's where it goes. Some are very specific, just one thing. I've got one, I'm the treasurer of the local, and so as a result, I have to parcel it all out, and I've got one that's divided 7 ways. And they're not equal, 5%, 10%, 15%, 20%. They get different amounts out of this, and it's a substantial fund. Our largest fund locally is the Peter Pew Fund. The money primarily goes to the Humane Society, and it was originally came to us a few years ago at about $1.5 million for one fund. Money that the earnings go to the Humane Society. They didn't get the $1.5 million. They came and reinvested in effect for them. On the other hand, I know just 2 years ago, the OCF received an endowment from a man named Fred Fields, and he left them $150 million. And it all goes to art education. And so a lot of the arts programs and educational programs that are all surrounding art all over the state, and we're starting the first big round, and I'm on the review committee down in this area, where that money's distributed out, and that's going to be, frankly, millions of dollars every year coming out of that 150 million that you go through. So anyway, OCF is very involved in the state. They are statewide at this point, which was their intent, why they established themselves as the Oregon Community Foundation. I didn't know it started with frankly, some timber barons and others up in the Portland area. It was intended to be statewide, and it is, in fact. In recognition of their 40th anniversary, the board has said they wanted to find out if there were any communities that had never received a grant. And when they did the research, they found 13. And those are the 13 that are on your shirt. Now, they had a criteria. It had to be an incorporated community, and it had to have somebody living there. Believe it or not, there's some incorporated communities in Oregon in which nobody lives there as a permanent resident. Basically because of the isolation of them, they're not anywhere around, and so people kind of come and go, but they are incorporated communities. So these 13, they could find no indication that any organization, and that doesn't mean that the community received the money, but was a grant ever given in the community. Did anybody in the community ever get a scholarship from OCF? Did any nonprofit in the community ever receive any money from OCF? And they came up with these 13. And as you can imagine, they're all somewhat small. On this list, Dune City is actually the second largest. Millersburg is the largest by less than 20 people, more than Dune City. Goes all the way down to Lone Rock, which has 22 people who live in Lone Rock. And so there are, on that list, there's 1, 2, 3 of them that had less than 100 people in it. So, and you go from there. I gave you this thing, and if you want to look at it, I'll let you know where they are real quick.
Okay.
So you can, Jorge was going to go out and do it later and give it to me when he
Googled it.
You said you'd give me money if I
When you
did
Googled it, there you go. Not
you
fair.
haven't done it, so I'm going to give the money to Becky. Number 1 on it is, anybody?
Oh.
Prescott. Prescott. Number 2,
Dune City.
Dune City. Number 3 is a little place called River Grove. If you go on the map, pull up River Grove, it's a little narrow little thing that follows along the river. Why it's incorporated, who knows, but it is. Number 4 is Maywood Park. That's up in the eastern part of Multnomah County. Number 5 is Johnson City. You got that one right?
I got
All right.
Got 2 right.
Number 6 is Barlow. Up there. Number 7 is Millersburg. If everybody knows where Millersburg is. It's right at the north end of Albany as you go through,
Oh.
through where the big plant used to be.
Town Market or
That's
something.
No, just that Albany was Millersburg where they had that big plant they've been tearing down the last couple of years. The big stinky plant. It's gone away. That's Millersburg. Number 8, Sodaville. And I found out from the state representative who has Sodaville in his district, he says the name came because there used to be a soda spring there. Used to be. This is about 4 or 5 years ago, a bunch of teenagers got together and they blew it up. So the name Sodaville no longer has a soda spring. Kids blew it up. Where was it? That was 8. 9 is Waterloo. And here you thought it was in Europe. Yeah. Meeting near Waterloo. Number 10 is Idana. And the woman says, well, no, that's it. I drive through it all the time. Okay. Number 11 is the smallest, Lone Rock. You can see where it's way over there in Eastern Oregon. And number 12 is Monument. And 13 is Granite. 13 is growing. Granite now has 38 people in it.
Oh.
I remember 20 years ago when they varied between 1 and 3. And one of the big things was when the local sheriff came through town and somebody in Granite killed him about 20 years ago. Cut down on the population.
Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome. But you're not, you go to sheriff, so it doesn't make any difference, Mark.
I know.
Everybody, all these places make history somehow or another. But the primary purpose is to come in and share with you. You got a pamphlet here that gives you a lot of background and to share it with you. And as always, I encourage, if you're involved with any nonprofits in the area, do go online and look up OCF and look at applying for grants. The other 3 that I presented, this is because of the anniversary. The other 3 I presented this last year. $20,000 grant to Habitat for Humanity. $15,000 went to the new radio station, and $20,000 went to SOS, and this 5 here. And so those organizations had applied to OCF and were granted their request. Typical grant is about $20,000. That's kind of the average for OCF. Much larger than the typical grant out of Western Lane as such. But there's a lot there. So if you are involved in any, or anybody out here that's involved in nonprofits, look it up, because they give away, like I say, about $63 million a year, and about 7 of that goes to scholarships, and all the rest of it goes to nonprofits all over the state to meet their needs. And so there's a lot of information in the pamphlet for that. With that, quick, that gives you coming out. This is a grant award that is given to Dune City in the amount of $5,000. And it comes from the Val Tabor Memorial Fund. Always grants, when they're made, are identified as to where the money comes from. For the Oregon Community Foundation. Whoop, I just threw it. Hands are getting old. Anyway, this for this year. And so it is for Dune City to use for the betterment of the community. So it's your choice. And I know you've been aware of this. You haven't made any decisions yet. We're still discussing.
We're still discussing it, but we're putting it in the next year's budget.
To use it next year.
To spend it, yeah.
Okay, all right. So there you are. Congratulations.
For Fred.
I think you just took one.
Did you?
I did, yep.
Yeah.
Can you cash
I always like
that?
to pose better.
Can you cash that thing?
No.
Yes.
Yeah.
We'll cash it. Thank you
You
very
got the
much,
check yet?
Roger.
We do. It came on June 3rd.
Got it.
See, you actually had the check
Thank you.
for
Thank you, sir.
3 months.
Thank you very much.
Done a good job. Yeah. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Roger. Val Tabor Memorial Fund.
So you didn't have to do it to get tonight, because you already had it.
Can we get another $5,000 next year?
Come up with something to apply.
Yes. Got lots of ideas on that.
Good, good.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Robert. Okay. Moving on to agenda item 7, citizen input. Renee, do you have citizens signed up to give input this evening? Okay. I will call Mr. John Stead.
Thank you, Mayor Rudy. I am speaking to you this evening because I'm interested in sharing with you a letter that I wrote to you and the Dune City Council on September 2nd. And this is regarding the Citizen Advisory Committee, the CAC disbandment. Dear Mayor Rudy and members of the City Council, the CAC's disbandment by the Planning Commission on August 26th is troubling, as it suggests a potential disregard for the effectuation, that's the city's effectuation, of Goal 1 citizens' involvement. The purpose of this letter is to request that the council take action resulting in the CAC's reinstatement and assuring the availability of the proposed changes to Ordinance 203. At its June 12th meeting, the council directed the Planning Commission to convene a CAC to conduct a review of Ordinance 203 for the purposes of making a recommendation for language changes, if any. Subsequently, on July 24th, the Planning Commission appointed Bonnie Allen, Mary Jo Leach, Susie Nevada, Denise Sanders, and John Stead, and charged them as stated in the public notice. Quote, the CAC will provide a recommendation on proposed changes to Dune City's Ordinance 203 regarding septic maintenance. And that's different from what the council had instructed the Planning Commission to do. Copies of the Citizen Advisory Committee procedures, responsibilities, and expectations, and ordinances 210A, which is proposed, and 211A, which was adopted and remanded by LUBA, they were provided to us as information. The proposed changes to Ordinance 203 were not available. They are not available. The city's citizen involvement policy dictates that the Planning Commission appoint a CAC, quote, to provide citizen input on proposed changes to the comprehensive plan and or land use regulations. And city staff is to work with the CAC members to determine a meeting schedule and to publicize the meetings with an accurate description of the proposed change to the city's comprehensive plan or land use regulation. In keeping with the city's Goal 1 comprehensive plan requirement that, quote, CACs will make recommendations to the PC specifically regarding the proposed change to the land use regulations for which the CAC was created. During its first and only meeting on August 13th, the CAC reviewed its purpose and searched for proposed changes to Ordinance 203 for review. When a document identifying proposed changes could not be found, the CAC suspended further meetings pending assistance from the Planning Commission. CAC disbandment action. As CAC chairman, I attended the August 26th Planning Commission meeting along with Bonnie Allen. We were present as under new business was the following agenda item, quote, clarify and reassign CAC Task Ordinance 203 septic maintenance action item. Unfortunately, the above item was not discussed, subverting even the smallest opening for dialogue or compromise. Rather, I was repeatedly asked to call a meeting of the CAC with my full knowledge, that the Planning Commission had no interest in pursuing the CAC's request for assistance. As CAC chairman, respect for the committee's decision to suspend meeting until help arrived was my first priority. The following Oregon statute explains it best. ORS 197010 policy. The Legislative Assembly declares that, 1, in order to ensure the highest possible level of livability in Oregon, it is necessary to provide for properly prepared and coordinated comprehensive plans for cities and counties, regional areas, and the state as a whole. These comprehensive plans, and I selected two things, C, shall be the basis for more specific rules and land use regulations which implement the policies expressed through the comprehensive plans, and D, shall be prepared to assure that all public actions are consistent and coordinated with the policies expressed through the comprehensive plans. I urge the council to correct this grievous error, and I stand ready to assist in the important work that remains to be done. Respectfully submitted, John Stead, Chairman, Dune Cities CAC.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Stead. I appreciate your attending this evening. I want to let you know that I received this letter shortly after you brought it here, and as well as the counselors, and I'm sure everyone has read it, reviewed it, and we also have reviewed the minutes of that meeting, August 13th, and I want to thank you for your input. We have scheduled later in the meeting, it is scheduled. Although it's not an action item, we'll be hearing a report later on in the meeting under Mr. Hilden's report. Okay? So thank you very much. Appreciate it. I will call Susie Nevada, please.
I'll pass at this time. John said it better than anyone.
Oh, all right. Thank you so much. Mr. Belmore.
Ditto.
Oh, ditto. All right. Thank you so very much then. I appreciate your attendance this evening, and I hope you're able to stay for the meeting and hear the discussion. All right. Well, we've done the presentation, so we'll just move right along. Unfinished old business, ad hoc committee report from Councilor Anderson, who's not present.
Most largely because of my absence for surgery, we did not meet, so there's really nothing new to report there.
Okay, we'll just postpone that to the next agenda.
Okay, thank you.
Medical marijuana dispensary moratorium, and Jamie's gonna talk about this a little bit, right?
Right, we received correspondence from legal counsel regarding the proposed ordinance that we had discussed earlier. And so now it is time for the ordinance review committee to get that together, take that into consideration, and come back with recommendations to the council. Unless the letter, a copy of the letter is in the binder tonight, it's in our packet. So if you wish to discuss it, we can certainly do that. And it would help the ordinance review.
I agree.
Point of information.
Councilor Anderson? Yeah, or
Sanders.
Sanders.
To the city administrator, is this email from Lauren Summers considered privileged attorney-client communication?
No.
It's not?
No.
So it can be discussed in open session? Thank you.
So, everyone's had an opportunity to read this, correct? So, do we have any discussion on this?
I'd like to have some discussion.
Councilor Sanders?
In the third paragraph of Ms. Summers' email, she states, quote, "I understand that the city wants to effectively prohibit dispensaries by regulating them to the point that there is really nowhere they can locate within the city. If that is the city's intent, a land use ordinance may not be the best option. Even if the conditions placed on the use would prohibit it now, things may change. For example, a bunch of hotels go out of business, and a dispensary may be able to locate in the city in the future because all the hotels went out of business. The dispensary location is no longer within 1,000 feet of a hotel." I understand the logic and the reasoning that the attorney is presenting here. However, when I presented to the council at the last meeting that I attended, which was 2 months ago, the idea was to include the RV parks and the motels in our community within 1,000 feet, because that is transient lodging where people vacation with family, and that includes their children. I have seen children in the docks, the marina, and whatnot. That's consistent with the statute within 1,000 feet. And I fully understand that if an RV park goes out of business and someone wants to buy it and build a dispensary, they could do that in the future. That was not the point of my discussion. My discussion was to protect things the way they are now. And in the time period between now and whenever that comes to pass, I'm sure there will be countless court cases fought with other cities on the hook for massive legal expenses in dealing with this issue. And we're not saying they're prohibited. There would be one location where a dispensary could be, and that would be at the fire station on Clear Lake Road. So we're not saying no. We're saying we don't want it within 1,000 feet where we have children. It's in treating the RV parks and the motels like residential areas, which the statute prohibits within 1,000 feet. So I know what she's saying. Point is taken, but I'm going into this, and I knew this when I made the proposal. I knew that going into it. That doesn't dissuade me from the idea that right now, I think that would be the best approach for our community to go forward with this. Thank you.
Thank you. I like what you said. Any other opinions?
I absolutely concur with Marty's. I think that his thoughts about this and what it would do right now, and to give us a window to see what this really might end up becoming through the stage if it does, and then, we at least have some time and are doing what I think we all agreed to last time, and that's that if there's going to be kids around, it's a no-no.
Further down in the letter, she offers a suggestion or recommendation that perhaps we would be interested in taking the lead, such as Medford has done, and I'll just read for the benefit of the audience. If the city is concerned about allowing dispensaries because they are illegal under federal law, the city could follow Medford's lead and require dispensaries and other businesses to get business licenses from the city, but declare that the city will only issue business licenses to businesses that comply with all state and federal and local laws. To me, that suggestion has a shorter shelf life than our current proposal that we're dealing with,
I would ask,
I think.
Mayor, I'd suggest you read the next sentence to the public
Okay.
as well, because I think that is kind of critical importance.
Okay, it says there is some risk of litigation with any of these options, but in my opinion, and this is, council's opinion, the only way to absolutely avoid litigation is let dispensaries locate in the city, and the council does not seem to want to do that. So,
Now,
it's our city.
I would like to add that in November, there's an initiative on the ballot where Oregon may legalize recreational marijuana like Colorado and Washington does. If that happens, if that happens, not when, but if, that changes the complexion of the landscape completely. This whole thing may become moot at that point.
True.
So what do we want to make as a statement now? Do we want to put ourselves out there and say you can't violate federal law and then get sued on the basis of state law because these groups will target cities to file suits? You know, do we even want to engage ourselves and make ourselves a target? Again, that's part of the reason why I suggested it the way I did, is to protect the children. That is our mantra. We will protect our children.
Other opinions? Councilor Mills?
We currently have a moratorium, and that moratorium is until when?
March or April?
March or April next year. So in my mind, we have a little time to think about it. And see, maybe, I don't know if we want to wait that long, but maybe see if it is on the ballot, if it is successful, and then we'll know at that point. And I hate to say, and we'll grapple with that then, but that's what I would suggest, is that we don't stick our neck out right now. Yes, we all believe the same way, we all feel the same way, and I'm certainly willing to, you know, if you direct ordinance review committee to move forward with it, then we will. But my feeling is, why jump out in front if we have a little time? Let's give it a little time. If we're not going to make any money off of it, you know.
Councilor Scarborough, you have any thoughts or comments?
I'm still mixed between just an out-and-out denial, saying that we aren't going to allow it, or going with Maury's. One seems easier, but I'm not sure any of the options are going to stop anybody from suing us anyway. I mean, I don't think it matters what you do. If something as controversial as that, I think you're going to get a lawsuit no matter what.
Councilor Sanders?
This only handles one part of the triad of issues with the dispensary law. It does, we're not even dealing with grows on private property. Now, if somebody wants to grow their, whatever it is, 15 plants or whatever it is that a caregiver can do, you know, the problem with doing that with the environment is that person will be leaving themselves open to have another person trying to rip off the grow. Okay? And it's a law enforcement issue. I mean, you can't help it. You can't. People are growing already in this town. We all know that. It's a given.
I don't personally know that.
Trust me, there are people who have search warrants done in this community. It's been done. We're not banning it outright, so we can't be attacked on that. We're being reasonable and complying with what state law says about within 1,000 feet of the children. We do have property that's open for it. I think our risk of litigation is the lesser of any of them. And I prefer to have the other cities in the state be on the bleeding edge instead of us.
Councilor Scarborough?
I agree with Jamie. I think we've got time on this. So another 6 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever it is, till after the election, and see what's going to happen with that ballot measure. And then we have a definitive answer, and we know where to go from. Because we may just be spinning our wheels if that thing passes.
Exactly.
True. We don't want to subject our ordinance review committee to that.
That's not the big deal. The big deal is, you know, it's the whole council, it's the whole city. You put it on the books, you take it off the books, you know.
I have not had one person come up to me and say, oh no, I think Dune City is making a mistake about, not allowing or having a moratorium on this, marijuana dispensaries. And I'm just curious. I mean, I think we represent the citizens of Dune City on this issue. And, you know, if that's all I can say. And that's, you know, I would certainly hope that that's the case, that we all are, represent the citizens. So would maybe January be a good time to put it back on the agenda, or you want to see it on the November agenda, or?
Anytime after November works for me.
The election will be over by the time we have our November meeting.
Right, so-
So it'll be a whip in the past, so.
What about November? November?
November work.
Let's schedule it for November. You guys? Good, all right. Okay, thank you all. Comprehensive plan update. Jamie, Councilor Mills.
Yes, at the last meeting, the ordinance review committee, I read their recommendation, which you'll find in the packets. Basically, the discussion that we had, I'm sorry, it was actually my fault. When looking at our comprehensive plan, I did some studies online, looked around at other cities and what their comprehensive plans look like. And the one that was easiest for me to understand and follow and was absolutely no question that it followed met the statewide goals was the one for Oregon City. And so we discussed it at ordinance review, and what we came up with was if the council wants to do that we would recommend that we use the Oregon City comprehensive plan as a guideline for redoing and updating the June City comprehensive plan. That way we can make sure it complies with statewide planning goals, that we don't miss anything, and that we take the information contained in our comprehensive plan and divide it out into the different breakdowns that they have in the Oregon City comprehensive plan. And it makes sense, except that it's a huge task. There are those who are very resistant to change. I'm one of them, and may fear this kind of rewrite. So we brought it to the council, the ordinance review recommended that we didn't really recommend that we change the Oregon to that lineup, but if the council chooses, then we gave you the list of assignments of how to break that up among the various committees and commissions. That make myself clear?
Yes.
And so there was a desire, and understandably, to wait and hold discussion of this issue until all councilors were here, but no, we're still missing one. But at least we're not missing two.
Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts, Counselor? Like she said, it would be a huge undertaking, and I don't know if we have any avenue of getting professional help.
Just got $5,000.
Well, yeah, I guess we did. Counselor Mills?
Do we still get DLCD planning grants?
We are still getting 2 small DLCD planning grants that are just kind of awarded because we participate in the Coastal Zone Management Program. When I say they're small, one is $2,700, one is $1,500. But we are still eligible for all of the Transportation and Growth Management grants, all of the Coastal Zone Management grants. And I think if we undertook something like this, it would be my recommendation that we try to not only get some grant money, but seek involve the assistance of our city planner in the process, Jacob Collister.
Absolutely.
Just to help keep, from a staff perspective. We have so much going on right now with Title 15 and Title 14, and our current staff is just treading water, trying to keep our head above water. I don't want to discourage the council from wanting to move ahead with a comprehensive plan restructuring. Clearly from the exercise we went through, the council went through a year ago, it would appear that the comprehensive plan, well, again, a lot of people are not very favorable towards change. It would appear to me that the comprehensive plan deserves a pretty substantial makeover.
I think those words were chosen wisely because it does deserve respect and of, updating and, because that's our go-to document. And I just think that it's a bigger undertaking, and I just hesitate to start out with parceling pieces out to different committees and, perhaps not being organized, and I just, that's my opinion. So what do other counselors think?
Well, I think that, well, I don't think, I know that I've seen Councilor Mills, how in-depth she goes when she does her job, when she volunteers and does all the extra work that she does. I'm sure that she's put a lot of time and effort in, and if Councilor Mills believes that using Oregon City's plan as a guideline to help us, I think that's a good idea. So,
Yeah.
I'm on board with that.
Well, I've read that, the comprehensive plan, Oregon Cities, when she sent it out, it's like absolutely, it's absolutely very nice. Was that in our packet last month or?
I think
2 months
just
ago.
the table of contents was.
Yeah.
Oh,
Just the
oh,
contents.
it was very good. So the question is, how do we move forward?
The charge to the ordinance review committee was to take our current comprehensive plan and divvy it up to everybody so that the different committees could look at it. And that's where I got stumped. We go to looking at our comprehensive plan, and what should be chapter 4 isn't listed as chapter 4, and everything is all kind of mishmashed together. Nowhere is it clear that you're talking about the natural resources issues that you're talking about. Yes, there's a section that's labeled natural resources, but it's also talked about every other place in there. And so that's why we, if it could all get into one place. And then, how ours has all the policies and stuff in the beginning, the E, whatever, all the way through. What this does is at the end of every section, it addresses the policy. It lists the policies that affect that particular subject matter all the way through. So that, okay, I'm concerned about wetlands. Where would I find that? Under natural resources, the wetlands issues, there's the policies, that kind of thing. So I'm all for redoing the whole thing, but I also know that there are concerns about particular issues that perhaps should not await a revamp of the entire comprehensive plan. And so I say, if somebody wants to do that, that they bring forward their proposal and that we go through the process to do that while we're still moving forward and finding grant funding to do this and seeing this as a long-term goal. Whereas I know that there are some who wish to make short-term changes too.
Okay, well, have we discussed it enough? Want to put it on the agenda for next meeting? Well, it's an action item this meeting, so.
What is it we're seeking is direction to get to the ordinance review committee to either go to the Oregon City model and take what we have and rearrange it.
Make it fit.
Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, that's what I'm hearing, but rather than just the ordinance review committee doing it, splitting it up like those who did I prefer? I know the staff is kind of, okay, the planning commission and staff to go through the land use planning section, which is goal 2, go through the entire comprehensive plan, pull out anything that has to do with land use planning and stick it under that. But divide it out among everyone so that the ordinance review committee doesn't have to make a career out of this. And you're not only relying on one person, or one group of people's ideas. It spreads it out to a whole bunch of ideas.
What do you want to do, Jamie? What your committee's recommending, or do you want to just sit on it for a while, or?
Well, I say we sit on it for a while because we have a lot of other things on our plate right now. But I would like to see it as something that we put off shortly after codification I know, codification is way more important to me. However, any issues that are specific that somebody is concerned about with regard to changes to the comprehensive plan probably should come up separately.
Okay. Councilor Sanders?
What would it, do we have any estimated cost to have the LCOG planner start this process?
Not really.
Nope.
Can we put this also on the agenda as the budget committee for next year's budget process? Because I'm seeing this as a major expense that's currently unfunded. And
Yes.
I think it's premature for us to make any decision at this point other than to table it if that's the direction we want to go. It will take some professional help.
Yes. It would probably be appropriate to consult with somebody, maybe ask Jake how much he thinks it would cost to do it, you know, as far as man hours of time. And then we can start looking for possible grants. I mean, we need to have some kind of an action plan set out. I mean, we could put this like for our goal setting session in January. We could have, you know, this is one of our goals to get our arms around this, you know, next year. But in order to bring it to the budget committee, we really do need to have some numbers put to it, don't you think?
We need a guesstimate.
We need a guesstimate at least.
I would guess it'd be $10,000 minimum.
Well, we're not obligated to go to LCOG. There's plenty of private contractor planners that could do it for us.
My thought is if it's gonna cost that much, then why bother? You know, just, it's served us well for what we have. The comp plan has served us well. I just like to have things organized, you know? That's how I like to do things.
Would you be okay if the city administrator were to get some cost numbers and bring it back to us?
Oh, sure, I'd like to know.
I mean, I'd like to know if we're
what it costs
talking a $2,000 or $3,000 item. versus
Or 10.
nothing.
I mean, we can call around.
I mean, the value of volunteers, I mean, we're priceless, literally, so we might want to see what kind of deal we can get.
Okay. Have we, any further discussion on this?
Sounds like we're all one-minded.
Okay, so it's a consensus of opinion that someone in office can put out Renee or Fred or Michael, you know, just put out some feelers on what this might cost for future reference. And then,
Leave this on the agenda then as old business?
sure,
Okay,
I
or
mean, if you think you
just
can
enough?
figure that out in 30 days,
Oh, we can at least find out what we can find out 30 days.
sure, yeah.
Move on from
Well, we
there.
just don't want to, you know, out of sight, out of mind. Kind of deal. All right. Is everyone okay with that? Okay. I think if it's all right with everyone, I'll take a 5-minute recess. It is 7:55. Okay, I will reconvene the meeting. It is about 3 minutes after 8. Moving on to agenda item 10, which is new business, we're going to have a presentation from our city administrator. And this, I understand, is a presentation that you put together for a particular purpose?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This was a presentation that I prepared for the Wohink Lake Association's annual picnic and meeting on July 19th of this year. They were kind enough to extend an invitation to me to come and talk about this, so we put the information together, and it's a fair amount of work to put to compile this report. As Councilor Mills knows, because she's assisted me with it before, it's a fairly large database and a fair amount of work to break it down in a manner that makes sense. So I'm going to try to move through this fairly quickly. There's actually only, I think, a total of four or five slides. See if I can get that in focus a little better. I wanted to provide a little background and history to start with. Thank you, that's good. The first septic system maintenance ordinance was number 173, and it was adopted by the City Council on March 9th of 2006. According to that ordinance, Dune City's responsibilities primary were to maintain records of individual septic systems for properties in the city, to maintain a register of state-approved inspectors, to provide informational pamphlets when evaluations are due, and to provide forms for all evaluation reports. The owner's responsibilities were to do initial inspecting, that was to include mapping of the septic system. It's amazing how many septic systems we have in this city where people have no idea where their septic system is, where their septic tank is, where their drain field is. You know, and I was certainly no exception when I bought my property here in 2000. There were some cryptic maps, but they were not very accurate. So, the second owner responsibility is all evaluations to be in accordance with Dune City standards regarding registered inspectors, conduct visual and olfactory observation, basically that's eyes and nose, examine condition of septic tank and contents, examine absorption and disposal fields or drain fields, examine pumps, filters, and other important system features, and prepare a report of the system condition and mapping of the drain field. The evaluations were to be at a minimum of once every 5 years prior to the sale of the property and at time of change of use. In other words, if you added a bedroom, went from a 2-bedroom to a 3-bedroom home, that would be considered a change of use, and it would require an evaluation of the septic system. And you had to pay a fee to cover the expense of administering the ordinance. Little footnote there that a map and evidence of installation of pumping in the previous 5 years is a basis for compliance with this ordinance. So this one page basically tries to take ordinance 173, which I believe was 6 or 7 pages, and break it down into the kind of the key elements. So continuing, the second septic system maintenance ordinance was number 203. It was adopted by the City Council on January 14th, 2010. This ordinance intended to close the inspect without pumping loophole in ordinance number 173. There was a loophole in 173 that allowed people to have the inspection done without pumping, and that put them in compliance. Again, just quickly, Dune City's responsibilities were to maintain records of individual septic systems, provide a register of state-approved inspectors, and provide forms for all evaluation reports. The owner responsibilities: initial evaluation to include pumping and mapping, again closing that loophole. Periodic inspection is in accordance with Dune City standards, using registered inspectors, examining the condition of the septic tank and contents, examine absorption, disposal, drain field, and capacity to accommodate a test volume of water, pumps, filters, and other important system features, prepare a report of the system condition and mapping of the drain field. A couple things that are kind of important in that list that got changed were eyes and nose went away. The visual and olfactory inspections were dropped, and the addition of the drain field's capacity to accommodate a test volume of water was added. I think it was viewed as being a more predictable indicator of whether or not the drain field was working correctly. Basically, this is done by when the tank is open and being inspected. You run a fairly known quantity of water into the tank, say 100 or 150 gallons, and watch how long it takes for that water to be dissipated out into the drain field. In other words, if the tank comes up 150 gallons worth and does not go back down at a reasonable rate, you know there's probably issues with the drain field. Item 3, inspections at a minimum of once every 5 years prior to sale of the property, and again at time of change of use. And there was also a date of March 2012 for 100% compliance set by this ordinance. And again, a fee to cover administrative expense of administering the ordinance here at City Hall. And again, the footnote that evidence of installation in the previous 5 years is basis for compliance with this ordinance. So, let's talk a little about where we're at in that process. Dune City properties and septic maintenance priorities. The number of tax lots in Oregon, in Dune City is approximately 1,142. The number of properties with structures requiring septic is approximately 770. The priority of maintenance based on property location and system installation date, and this basically was kind of more procedural administratively, and it was basically picked up with 173 and then continued with 203. The first priorities were properties that were lakefront with a system that was installed before 1974. Then lakefront properties where the system was installed between 75 and 84. There were major changes in 75 and in 85 regarding what the system, how the system was installed and what levels it needed to perform to and so on. And then the third priority, lakefront, with a system installed after 85. And then moving back from the lake, we actually set up 5 levels with going from 0 to 4, with 0 being lakefront, 1 being 1 or 2 lots back from the lake, 2 being 3 or 4 lots back from the lake, and so on. And so those priorities for 4, 5, and 6 were established. And basically, these priorities provided staff with guidance in terms of who to send out notices to, that it was time to have their septic system evaluated against the appropriate ordinance. So, again, in March of 2006, things got off to a little bit of a slow start, even though the council, I think, had done a good job of putting 173 in place. I don't believe staff was prepared to deal with a new ordinance like this. The city expended a substantial amount of time and money trying to put a database in place to administer both the septic inspections that were required by this ordinance, as well as the water right compliance information that had come out of the ordinances that were passed in the 2004-2005 timeframe. So an internet-based system was designed and developed and paid for, and eventually that system proved to be too cumbersome and unwieldy, so it was totally abandoned in favor of a much simpler Excel spreadsheet that has worked nicely ever since. So in 2006, there were 39 notices sent. That second column over is cumulative notices. In that year, the number of homes that became compliant was 87, and again, cumulative through the end of 2006 was 87. In 2007, 24 notices were sent. Again, you can see there just wasn't a lot of staff time and energy put into that. With a cumulative of 63 notices sent, and basically those are just what they say, they're just cumulative. So the additional 61 that became compliant took the total that were compliant to 148 and so on. I'm not going to go through all that detail. In 2008, 35 notices were sent. In 2009, we had we've gone through some major turnover here in staff at City Hall, and there was a major thrust put behind getting the septic notices out. And in 2009, 142 notices were sent. An additional 110 properties came into compliance. 2010, we really got behind it with 189 notices sent out. Another 125 properties came into compliance. And again, I guess one of the things I want to say is these are all unique properties. In other words, if a property is listed in 2008 as having a notice sent and becoming compliant in that year, perhaps. They're not listed anywhere subsequently in the list at this time. I just wanted to make this a clean first pass. In 2011, 176 notices sent, with 75 more becoming compliant. And in 2012, the remaining 134 notices sent. And you can see the numbers of people that have come into compliance. Basically, in 2012, rather than sending notices, my intent was to get everybody into compliance. And so we've been doing that mostly with phone calls and trying to do it through a more non-confrontational method. And as you can see, we're at 645 properties right now. Approximately 270 lakefront properties with structures and septic systems, and approximately 36 of them have not been pumped or inspected according to our database. That's not to say, they could very well be in compliance, but we just don't know it. Some people are pretty obstinate about telling the city about what's going on their property. And they may have had the septic system pumped and inspected, and they may be in compliance, but they're just unwilling to tell the city about it.
Well, I thought, Fred, if I could please just ask you a question. When they pump it, isn't there a form that they give the person and then they send a copy to City Hall?
Yes, and pay a fee. But some people choose to just tell the pumper and inspector that they aren't interested in complying with Dune City septic ordinance. They're not going to pay the $50 inspection fee, and they're not going to pay, they don't want the form filled out. So, people are like that. This is
And we're, okay, thank you.
Did that answer your question?
It did, thank you
Okay.
very much.
I've had the opportunity to work with Mr. Hillman on this kind of report, and took it upon myself because I was curious of the 36 lakefront properties that did not appear in the system as having complied. I don't remember the numbers now, but it was a huge number of them are either for sale, listed for sale, or the owners are currently in senior living facilities, so that there's not anybody living in the homes. There are some that there are, and it's active, but there are.
Some of them are in foreclosure.
And some of them are in foreclosure, right? So,
Well, maybe we should have a category that says other.
it's a nightmare to find out. I mean,
Well-
it's a lot of time and effort, a lot of driving, going to real estate offices,
Councilor Sanders has a question.
Oh, Councilor Sanders.
The ordinance doesn't allow for vacant homes to be exempt, or homes in foreclosure to be exempt, or people in senior assisted.
Not really.
And that was one of the reasons in my mind that you would want to have a review of the ordinance for these types of things, that there's no latitude.
Right.
The only latitude is that the city recorder, in 203, the city recorder was given the authority to grant extensions. And under certain circumstances, I did grant one 6-month extension, but I did that, knowing that the pleasure of the council was to get these homes, to get these properties in compliance. I did that with a great deal of discretion. In other words, I didn't just freewheeling hand out extensions.
If I understand your statistics up there, your numbers, we have 770 lots with septic systems, and we have 645 that are in compliance. Is that correct?
That's correct.
We have 125 out there, which is roughly, what, 18%? And there's been no movement on getting the 18%.
Yes, there have.
Okay.
In fact, even since this report was prepared, the data that I used, I presented it to the Wohenk Lake Association on July 19th. The data I used was from, as this says, July 1st. And I'm going to guess Renee maintains that database, but there have probably been another 15 or 20 inspections that have come in since that time.
Yeah, easily.
Now, some of those, I'm quick to point out that some of those are repeats of people that are already in compliance. And again, this was This was trying to get a clear look at initial compliance.
So if I ask, how many septic systems in our city are not in compliance? What would that number be?
Somewhere approximately 100 to 120?
So we don't know specific?
No.
Okay.
And here's another reason, is like, there's one property that is not in compliance because the house burned down.
Right.
And there's not been a rebuild, and yet there's a septic tank that we're counting in non-compliance, right?
Correct.
So, see,
And we won't have a
There's
list
the
of
other.
those specific situations, so we can get a true picture of who's using septic systems and not making compliance.
We're continuing to update the database daily, Maureen.
All right. Thank you.
We're also slowly getting a list of people that are only here like maybe twice a year for maybe a couple of days. So that are just solely used for vacation homes. So that's also, we're also starting to get numbers with that too. So that'll help.
It's very complicated.
yeah, it's very complicated, it's not. Thank you. Continue, or you're done?
I'm done.
Oh, wow.
Are there any other questions?
Yeah, questions or comments from the council?
Thank you very much.
John?
I think that,
None? Yes?
Fred, very good report. I think that this just really shines a light on what's wrong with 203. It doesn't take into account real world, let alone the mandatory aspect of it, the other 5 years. There are places in Dune City that do not need to be inspected every 5 years because of use. The vacation home, when there's other places that may need more, lakefront, an older lakefront, But that's the problem with 203. That's been my problem with it from the very beginning. It doesn't take into account real world, how people are using the property. And then just to stick on there, mandatory, you're going to do this. It doesn't separate. And it's not fair.
All about there.
That's why we asked for a review in 203.
That's why we asked for that review. Comments?
I agree, that's why we asked for the review. I think there needs to be some latitude and flexibility in the mandatory piece of it. Some of that doesn't make sense. There are places that have been sold 3 or 4 times in the last 2 or 3 years and have been inspected 3 or 4 times in the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, well,
3 times.
Councilor Sanders is a good example of that. Expected 3 times in the last 7 years or something.
Inspected 4 times,
Oh.
pump 3 in an 8-year period.
That's not cool.
See, that doesn't make any sense to me.
That's actually bad for the system.
I know.
But those are the kinds of things that I think
Right.
we were talking about.
Not full of it like people be saying.
A lot of them are using it.
Yeah, those are the types of recommendations we'd like to see come out of a committee or a CAC or something like that, right?
That's what we asked for.
Yeah. Any comments from this side of the Welcome to Councilor Anderson, who came in at the break there during the presentation.
I apologize.
No problem. We're just announced earlier, Councilor, if I could just recap and take a little hiatus for a moment, that you had a great grandchild since the last meeting, and it's a little
Again?
girl.
That's 2 in 1 month.
Nice. And when was she born?
Saturday, I think.
Saturday, and her name is Lila Mae.
Lila Mae.
Lila Mae Mitchell. That's very pretty.
Councilor Anderson, have you found out what causes great-grandchildren yet?
Okay, I'm not going to lose control here now. Okay. So welcome, thank you for joining us. Yeah.
Thank you, sorry.
No problem. Any further comments on septic maintenance history? Okay, thank you, Fred, for that. We appreciate the time and energy you put into that.
Thank you.
Planning Commission appointment. We have one, actually. So in your packet, councilors, we have an opening for planning commissioner, and we have an applicant. And I will, Ms. Bonnie Allen, and I will entertain a motion to appoint Bonnie for the term that expires 12/31/15.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call, you have a,
I will say something while I have an opportunity. Bonnie serves on the Water Quality Committee, and she served very well. We are very grateful for the time and effort that she puts in, and I'm sure she will do a good job on the planning commission as well.
I agree. Hear, hear. Any further comments or questions?
Well, I also got to work with Bonnie on our ad hoc committee, and she did an outstanding job, and was very helpful, had a lot of information she brought to the committee. Glad to see her.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you.
And I've already announced once that she's gone the extra mile in terms of the water quality by being a skier and making sure that the lake is all.
Oh, level. That's good. That's great.
Can we vote by acclamation to move?
So, any further discussion? I'll call for the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Thank you so much, Bonnie, and welcome to the planning commission. And so, carry on. Okay. Go forth and plan. Okay. Okay, we are to reports now. My report this evening, I just want to make the council and citizens aware that there is some activity from the Ford Foundation, who's a giver of many, many community grants in the area. And I have been approached by a group that is learning about that, and they will be asking us to give input on what types of grants our city is interested in receiving. So I don't know a great detail about that, but stay tuned. I just want to put it out there. Okay, I suppose I said city 3 times, right? It's funny. Okay. So that's my report. Moving along, Councilor Meyer is, you've done a little traveling for us and meetings for us this past month, haven't you?
Well, Merry Christmas when I'm out of the house.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Yes, I attended a meeting that was co-sponsored by Comcast Communication and Charter Communication. And they presented their plans. Comcast is, on a nationwide basis, is taking over Time Warner Cable. And that's currently at the federal level being discussed and all that sort of stuff. And then they're doing some sort of a merging of Comcast and Charter, and what's going to happen, as I understand it, is in the Northwest, so Washington and Oregon will be Comcast covered, and California and some of the Midwest will be more Charter. And some of the exciting things that I heard from that is that anything that Comcast has, we will have the ability to have here on the coast, such as the Pac-12 network. We could actually watch our teams play. Any objections to that? And they've got some other systems that just sound like they might be almost science fiction, but they have programs in effect that allow you to, and Marion Jackson from Charter doesn't live in a Charter area, so she's got Comcast, and she is able on her cell phone to change the channels on her home TV while her husband is watching it.
That's a value.
And she said, I know when I go home tonight, because she demonstrated it for me, and she said, I know when I go home tonight, he's going to say, how many times do I have you demonstrate this while I'm doing it? But with this that program, I mean, you can lock your house from afar, or turn your heat up or down, or your lights on or off. You know, it just sounds like fantasy almost to me, but in terms of the average age of our community, and, you know, that a lot of us are retired and senior citizens and those kinds of things, some of these options really sound interesting to me and amazing to me and safe to me. You know, I'm always hesitant to leave for 2 weeks on vacation and leave the house vacant, and, you know, I don't know.
Rowdy neighbors.
And the rowdy neighborhood, the neighborhood that I live in, you know, is a little rowdy, so.
And the one up the street from you.
Right. So I thought it was a very worthwhile presentation that they gave. They didn't specifically talk about any increase in fees, but they have an Internet Essentials program for low-income folks, and so as long as the child is on a reduced fee lunch program at school, they can get $9.95 a month for high-speed internet, and they also have laptops for sale at a reduced price for the low income. They want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to, you know, gain information and gain knowledge. And there's some options to look for jobs online for kids and adults. It just sounds like they've got some really good ideas. You can open your garage door automatically. But they're talking about this not being implemented until at the very earliest, the first quarter of 2015, and most likely it'll take it into the second quarter. And since we as a city have adopted Charter, you know, as our provider, we would have to agree to go with this. And when that comes up, and there's a limit on that, I think, isn't there, Fred, a timeline that we have to say, yeah, we want to do that? But I thought it was a very, very good, very thorough presentation, and it made sense to me. And you know, as I said, I'm excited about some of the possibilities for the residents here, what they could have and what they could do, and all that. So I don't see it as anything more than an enhancement to what we already have. It may end up costing a little more, but I don't know that that's necessarily true.
They're pretty comparable, I thought. Did the person that come down, did he or she, did they talk specifically about the franchise agreement that we have, and are they going to?
Well, they very much want us to okay this reconfiguration, because we would have to adopt Comcast and rather than the Charter, because that's the way it's emerging now.
Okay. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day. I was hoping to be able to meet with them, and I was out of town at a previous planned meeting, and I appreciate your stepping up to do that for us very much.
Yeah, I just have a couple things I'd like to add about the Comcast thing. And as you know, I was in the hospital, so I was unable to attend. In my research, looking at the franchise agreement that we have, which is actually originally with Falcon Cable, and of course they were acquired by Charter, it does require that any change in ownership of the franchise requires the city's acceptance or approval of that. So we will be looking at a resolution to approve the acquisition of this area by Comcast taking over the Charter accounts. In my research looking at why this is happening, Comcast is the nation's largest cable provider, and they are acquiring, as Councilor Meyer indicated, Time Warner, which is another huge corporation and cable provider. And in an effort to avoid becoming a monopoly, or being viewed as a monopoly, or being claimed to be a monopoly by Charter, they worked out an exchange agreement of customers, Comcast giving up some of their territories to Charter, and Charter giving up some of their territories, obviously to a lesser degree to Comcast. So that's how the exchange came about. And again, from what information I've gathered, I totally agree with Councilor Meyer. I believe our residents will do nothing but gain by this change. So I'm looking forward to it.
Okay.
Also, the contract will give us the contract update will give us an opportunity to make sure that we have all of the services that are provided by the cable provider in our franchise agreement, and not just cable TV. If they provide internet phone service, if they provide internet, just lost the third one, there's a third one too. We'll make sure that those are covered by the agreement.
Phone, internet, and television,
Television.
right?
Yep.
Yeah. And you know, our revenue committee talked about this a few years ago. The contract wasn't up, so we couldn't really address it. Now it's time to really think that through, and are we, do we need a refreshing update on this, or are they going to pay us when did we initiate that contract?
What's that?
5 years ago?
No, it was 10 years ago with an automatic update at 5 years. And so it's due, it was actually due in April, and Comcast and the city agreed to a 6-month extension. Hindsight being 20/20, I now understand why they wanted the extension. We wanted the extension to give us more time to examine the contract and renegotiate it. They wanted the extension because they knew they were going to be in the process of some kind of a client swap with Comcast.
We haven't really taken a look, or have you taken a look at negotiations? I know that there's other cities that are surrounding us that are currently negotiating with them. I don't know how successful.
I have.
Excuse me for a minute. I'm gonna cough. Air conditioning.
I've spoken with both our city attorney and LCOG's attorney regarding the current charter agreements that were being renegotiated. A lot of the bigger cities are including in their negotiations with charter the acquisition of high-speed fiber for City Hall, and that's a big deal to a big city. If they've got 300 or 400 employees in a building, they need high-speed fiber in that. I mean, they have much more use for high-speed fiber in that building than we do. We get by quite nicely with our 20 gigabytes of speed. So, but I'll have a complete report with that, with the resolution at the October council meeting.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Councilor Sanders?
For the city administrator, what is the impact to our revenue with this merger or acquisition?
It's a little bit hard to project. I would guess there would be a very modest increase.
Okay.
Thank you.
As long as it's an increase instead of a decrease. Any other comments or questions regarding this? Thank you. Counselor, do you have another report for us?
The other meeting that I attended was the League of Oregon Cities in Yahats, but Maurice was there and Jamie was there also, so I'm impressed with them.
Okay.
Had some. I thought it was well presented. I always enjoy being able to talk to our state representatives who, and Caddy McEwen was there, a couple others, and so I thought it was a good dialogue. It was very well attended. My only negative comment was that they had cucumbers on every single sandwich.
I have to hold him back, he's going to go ballistic.
You can take them off.
That's what I'm going to- They've already bled all over it.
They're cucumber juice. Okay. All right. Anything else, Counselor?
No.
Nope. Counselor Mills, you want to report on that?
That meeting, I guess I could.
Oh,
there were predetermined issues that they wanted to discuss. Transportation, which of course is Maureen's bailiwick. Medical marijuana dispensaries, we discussed that. There were a number of things that I came away.
Property tax.
Yeah, property tax reform.
Right-of-way management and funding for mental health services.
My husband attended the meeting with me, and I had to hold him down. He didn't speak his mind at the meeting, but he sure did in the car on the way home about property tax and fuel tax and all kinds of things. Anyway, it is always a pleasure to be able to meet with your representatives. I did get a chance to speak with Rosie from Arnie Roblin's office as well. Mr. Roblin was not there, but Patty was, and is that all you want? I'm sure Maureen will throw something in on because Maureen talked a lot.
Oh,
So you have ordinance review committee then?
Yes, I do. The Ordinance Review Committee met on Monday, August 11th. We discussed the draft shared domestic water supply ordinance, the draft marijuana dispensary ordinance, and the development of a task assignment list for the comprehensive plan review. The shared domestic water supply ordinance will now go to legal for a review. The committee had not received the information from legal regarding the marijuana dispensary ordinance as of the meeting, and a recommendation of the committee as to the assignments regarding the comprehensive plan was submitted to the city council at the last meeting and discussed tonight.
And discussed tonight.
And that's all I have for ordinance review.
Okay, so the water.
The Water Quality Committee did not meet, did meet, there's a typo in my report, on August 20th. The Wahink-Setchi readings were between 15 feet and 19 feet in June and July. Temperatures and dissolved oxygen readings were normal with greater stratification in Wahinks during July. Silku-Setchi discs were 6.3 in June and 7 in July. Chlorophyll readings were 1.5 to 2 micrograms per liter in Wahink and 6 in Silkus. Dave DeMoss and Mark Chandler agreed to talk to the Wahink Lake Association board to see if they would be willing to help find volunteers to monitor the Wahink Lake boat launch during the salmon season to determine the severity of the boat flushing issue. I am to talk to Abe Bernard about the cost of doing a water testing training video. Committee members are still working toward getting the water testing data on the website. The committee will hold off further work on the comprehensive plan natural resource sections to see what the council decides as to the format for the comprehensive plan as a whole. The next meeting will be held September 17th at 3 p.m. The report states that immediately following there will be a going away party potluck for Mr. Chandler, for Mark Chandler, and that everyone is invited to attend. However, I received notification from Mr. Chandler that due to a death in his family, he will not be able to attend on the 17th. So we're going to put off the party until we know he's going to be there. I mean, everybody, I like to party as much as the next person, but you know, he's the guy we're honoring. So we probably should wait till he gets back there. And then I said if appropriate gag gifts are also encouraged, so bear that in mind when we do have the party.
Good. Thank you. Okay, Councilor Wells.
Community center, the only thing I report, the dry weather makes the week going very easy. They're not growing very much.
Yes.
So that's a good thing.
That's your report?
That's it.
Okay.
No meetings.
All righty then.
Nothing going on.
Did you say no meat?
Yeah.
No weeds, no
Not
weeds,
here, not
no
here.
marijuana, none of that. Okay. Councilor Anderson.
I'm pleased to report that there are no problems, even back to the city, that we have any problems in the lakeshore area. We've not heard of any.
Great. Awesome. Councilor Scarberry.
No meeting last month. We have one planned for next week at 3 o'clock Thursday, so hopefully we get a quorum.
Okay. Do you need some help calling people, or what do you mean? If they know about it, you just,
They have email.
okay, all right. Thank you. Councilor Sanders.
I wasn't here last month, so I didn't attend the road commission meeting, but there's a bunch of minutes here that people can get enlightened from. What I would like to report is that all the street maintenance projects for this fiscal year are completed. I don't know what the final tally is. I would leave that up to the city administrator. I know there were a couple of overruns or change orders. Maybe next month we can give a report to the council on that.
Yeah, I probably will cover it in my report tonight.
Oh, okay, good. Other than that, and going back to the meeting, the League of Oregon Cities is proposing probably 10, 11, 12, 13 different ways to raise some money for the state transportation fund, including raising up to a nickel a gallon for tax on your gas. If you have a high mileage vehicle, they're going to charge you, they're looking at a proposal to charge you extra to cover that because you're not buying gas. Raising license plate registration fees, shortening the term for them, licensing ultralight trailers. I can't remember the list. When they
Increasing license plate fees.
Wow.
And I made some comment, it sounds like the insatiable appetite of government for tax dollars is at work here, but this is just the league, the organization representing the cities in Oregon, making a list of priorities to approach the legislatures with. That doesn't mean this is going to happen. And there was plenty of discussion about this stuff, that especially when they learned that people like with Priuses paid double fees on their registration. Our representative was unaware of it, and then seeing this and talking about promoting a vehicle mileage tax for those vehicles and not realizing they were paying double registration, kind of caught her blindsided, I think.
I think it did.
Wow.
So anyway, there's a lot of stuff coming down the pike in the legislature this session, so I would just advise everyone just to pay attention to it, because this could be in the pocketbook.
Yeah, well, there's probably going to be a city day at the Capitol in February coming up, so kind of keep that in mind. We'll probably attend.
Yeah, it's an odd numbered year and they have every other numbered year, so
We're due.
we're due.
Okay. Wow. Keep your gas guzzler. I don't know.
If I got the toy, I can afford the gas.
Okay, there you go. Wow. Anything else, Counselor?
I'll save the rest of my comments for the good order.
All right, then. Mr. Hilton, we're down to your emergency services report.
Thank you, Mayor. I attended the West Lane Emergency Operations Group meeting on August 18th representing Duke City. Annette Vasquez provided the financial report on Chief Langborg's behalf, and the report was accepted as submitted. Additional EOC ICS training for the board was postponed. The board continues their review of the West Lane Emergency Operation Group membership agreement and the rules of procedure. These two items have not been updated since the group's inception. Just a quick update on that. I received what I believe is the final draft for changes, so I would assume that if the board approves them on Monday, that we will have a document that we'll need to create an ordinance to repeal the ordinance that approved the original document and approves the new document. So look for this to be on the city council agenda for either October or November. The 2014 Homeland Security Grant was discussed. The grant's available through the Oregon Office of Emergency Management and is for $40,000 and would be used to upgrade our emergency management plan and provide additional EOC training. I'm also pleased to announce that I received an email on this last week while I was gone, and the $40,000 grant has been approved. So we will be receiving that from the Oregon Office of Emergency Management. Suggestions for new information on our website were brought forward. Our new website being the WeLog website. Current news and adding the budget to the site were some of the suggestions. And the site's available at www.wleog.org. New business for August included Don Hayes introducing Bob DuPose from the Homeless Coalition. I didn't have a clue that Florence had as many homeless people as the Florence area had as many homeless people as it does. You know, the estimate is somewhere between 15 and 50, depending on the weather days. You know, knowing that people that try to get in out of the weather, obviously, when it's cold and wet. The minutes of the July 21st meeting were approved. The next WheeLog meeting is this coming Monday, the 15th at 10 a.m. And I included the July minutes for your review. Any questions on emergency management?
Yes.
That, thank you. That 40,000 is for WheeLog.
Yes.
Okay. It sounded like it was for us, and I was thrilled.
Yeah, no, it would be sweet if it was.
Okay.
But it's, you know, it's an indicator, in my opinion, that as tight as budgets are, and I know that ODOT and every other state transportation department is working really hard at trying to figure out how to make up for the lost revenue associated with really gas-efficient cars. But it's a good indicator that there's still money out there and available. So we need to be barking up the, I think the Oregon Parks organization, as well as ODOT, as well as organizations like DLCD.
I have a follow-up question to her question. Is there any apportionment in there or any recognition for Dune City to help further our emergency preparedness out here? Have you talked to
Yes.
Chief Langenvord about that?
Yes, basically, and that money will be used to assist us with that process, but, you know, they want to make sure that every organization has a good emergency management plan, one that's appropriate for the size and nature of their organization. You know, recognizing that the City of Florence and Dune City and the tribes, Peace Health is now a member. So everybody's emergency plan probably is going to look a little bit different.
Oh, of course, yes.
But that money will help make sure that we all have good current plans in place.
Okay, awesome. Okay, carry on.
Okay, City Administrator Planning Report to Council. August permit activity declined a little bit in July. We issued 7 permits that included 1 structural, 5 electrical, and 1 mechanical. Work continued on 1 subdivision application, that being Montgomery View Estates. Copies of permits to Lane County and Lane Council of Governments continue on schedule. There were actually a total of 8 complaints filed in August. Most of the complaints were for abandoned equipment in residence yards and some vegetation issues. I believe 4 of the complaints were closed without any action. People were not clear on Dune City standards. There was some minor, you know, shovels full of material moved in a shoreland area, and technically it was not in violation of any of our shoreland code, and it certainly was not in violation of DSL's code. DSL doesn't require a permit unless you're going to move more than 50 cubic yards of dirt in the shoreland area, and that's the equivalent of 5 dump trucks.
Oh, wow.
Just for your reference. The Planning Commission appointed a citizen advisory committee to review septic system maintenance ordinance 203. And I'm going to have some more on that as we get down to the closure of my report. The CAC was to meet weekly until September 18th. The Planning Commission dissolved the CAC at their regular August 26th meeting, reciting the committee could not overcome its objections to the formation of the CAC, and they felt they had a lack of clarity about their assigned tasks. The Planning Commission has scheduled a special session on September 10th. In fact, that was held yesterday, to work on Council's request regarding Ordinance 203. They're also continuing their review of the City Attorney's comments on Chapter 155 Zoning and Development. A major staff focus during August was the 2014 street maintenance project. I'm pleased to announce its timely completion by Johnson Rock Products and Paved Northwest, who was the slurry seal subcontractor. This work included slurry sealing Lakeshore Drive, Leanza Drive, Silkhoose Drive, Silkhoose Terrace, Osprey Way, Spruce Lane, Catich Drive, Maple Street, and Laguna Avenue. This work will serve to provide additional protection for these streets for as much as 7 to 10 years. Major kudos to Laura Lee Lorenzen, Gary Baker, Road Commissioner Bill Harris, and Councilor and Road Commission Chair Maurice Sanders for all of their hard work in preparing and executing the public outreach that was conducted prior to the work being performed. All residents on affected streets were contacted through a door-to-door campaign, follow-up phone calls, and door hangers distributed on the morning of the work. This resulted in 0 complaints from the community, which I have to say is exceptional compared to what happened in 2009. So again, big kudos to that group for doing such a great job with the outreach. Water right administrative fees continue to come in, and staff has collected additional late payment fees from prior years totaling $565. I'm really pleased with our current staff and the efforts they're putting forth to clean up some of the things that just haven't been well attended to in the past by City Hall. So that's a good thing. Property files continue to be updated. We completed a report for the Urban Growth Boundary Research from Population Research Center for Portland State University. And the community health analyst for Lane County contacted staff to determine what Dune City is doing with the medical marijuana issue. Needless to say, we informed them that we had passed the moratorium effective for 1 year, and that the council was examining more strict restrictions on medical marijuana dispensaries. Preliminary and final petitions for this year's general election were processed during July and August. Rebecca Reedy filed her final petition for mayor, and Duke Wells and Sheldon Meyer filed their final petitions for city council. The winter issue of our newsletter will be coming in November. Again, please keep articles in mind for this issue. All but one advertiser has paid for their advertising in the summer newsletter. And I heard that came in last week. The last of the summer visitors have been stopping by Dune City for information about the dunes, kayaking, and camping. I think we probably have had more visitor traffic this year than any other year. And that may be an indicator that our economy is somewhat on the recovery, at least by those who can afford to travel. I want to spend a little bit more time on the Ordinance 203 issue, beginning with the Planning Commission's regular session from July 24th, 2014, where they appointed the Citizen Advisory Committee as they had been directed to do at the June City Council meeting. The city prepared a public notice for the meeting on July 24th. That public notice was published in the Siuslaw News, as well as being posted at City Hall and at the Westlake Post Office, and on our website, which are all of the traditional places and the places required by law. And that public notice was proofed by Emily Jerome, one of our city attorneys, our land use specialist. Unfortunately, there was a term that was used in that public notice that Mr. Stead brought particular attention to on several occasions in the letter he read during citizen input tonight, and that term was proposed changes, quote unquote, proposed changes. So there not having been any proposed changes that had been prepared for the CAC, that became a major bone of contention. And in fact, so the minutes of the Planning Commission meeting from July 24th are included. They've actually been approved by the Planning Commission. I also attached to my report, so you could read what had been going on, the draft minutes from the Citizen Advisory Committee meeting that took place on Wednesday, August 13th at 1 p.m. There were actually one of the things that Planning Commissioner Burke asked me to bring forward tonight in this discussion was to point out the number of email exchanges and the size of the emails that took place between staff and members of the Citizen Advisory Committee. There were probably a total of 7 emails of substance, and many more than that that lacked substance, that were things like, you know, where's Fred and where's George? And just because people were so anxious to hear back. In any case, there were a substantial number of emails just regarding whether or not the CAC even had the ability to meet weekly or that first week, because the draft procedure that the Planning Commission had approved back in January for an administrative procedure relative to the Citizen Advisory Committee had words to the effect that there would be a 2-week notice published about those meetings. What, excuse me, what was meant by that was that there would be 2-week notice, published notice, in terms of a public notice, to the meeting that would appoint the CAC, but it was not intended for the CAC to be required to post 2 weeks notice on their meetings. So there's obviously some clarification that we need to do in our procedures. But in any case, the Citizen Advisory Committee was paying very close attention to the documents that had been presented to them and that they had observed in the newspaper, and during the meeting, as you can tell from reviewing the 15 pages of minutes, it was very contentious in my opinion. I sat in on that meeting. We made repeated attempts to try and clarify the direction that the Planning Commission had provided to the group in an attempt to keep things moving forward. But ultimately, one of the members of the committee, and I'm not going to name names, it's really not important, it's in the minutes and I'm sure you've all read them. Basically, a motion was made by one of the members of the Citizen Advisory Committee to suspend that meeting and all future meetings until they got more clarification and direction from the Planning Commission. So, another flurry of emails were exchanged. Some of them escalated to the point that I felt they were appropriate to blind copy the council on, so I did so. But eventually they got to where there was just, again, another 10 to 15 emails exchange of substance, and I just didn't feel it was appropriate to continue that. So the bottom line is I met with Planning Chairman George Burke on the 14th of August, the morning after the meeting that the CAC had where they suspended that meeting and all future meetings. After meeting with Planning Chairman Burke, it was decided that since we already had a special session scheduled for Tuesday, August 26th, that we would simply add to that agenda an item that we called, I want to refer to the minutes so I get it right, clarifying and reassigning the CAC task regarding ordinance number 203, septic maintenance. I guess I didn't attend that meeting because I had been advised by my surgeon to avoid stressful situations. In reviewing the minutes and in talking with other staff members who were present at that meeting, I guess I would have to disagree with Mr. Stead, when he said in his letter and his public comment tonight that agenda item was never discussed. Because from my perspective, it's listed in the minutes as having been discussed. In fact, there are 3.5 pages of minutes on that agenda item. So I don't know where he was coming from with that comment. But in any case, it's clear to me that a pretty substantial exchange took place between Planning Chairman Burke and the chairman of the CAC, who was asked to represent the CAC, Mr. John Stead. and that at the end of that discussion or explanation, or whatever you want to call it, Vice Chairman Gargas made a motion to disband the CAC. Commissioner Martin seconded the motion, and the motion passed by unanimous vote. So at this moment, the CAC does stand disbanded. And I guess, you know, I have an opinion about that, but I'm not sure my opinion's important. But I'm wondering maybe if Planning Chairman Burke, who's present in the audience tonight, might be given a moment to add his comments. Jamie,
Absolutely.
Jamie has a question.
Well, I didn't have a question, I had a comment, but perhaps we need to hear from
Oh, I did.
George first.
One of the things I did do was ask Council President Mills to attend that CAC meeting in my absence.
Can I
Councilor
ask-
Sanders?
can I ask the city administrator a question to clarify from my understanding?
Absolutely.
I'd like to put this in terms that I can understand. The council gave direction to the planning commission to convene a CAC. The CAC was appointed and convened. They interpreted everything in the way they did, which is contrary to what the planning commission interpreted it. The CAC has decided that we're going to suspend the meetings until you do it and not reconvene. And the planning commission had explained what they felt their interpretation was, and they viewed that as not conducive, so they hired them.
It's pretty much what happened.
Thank you. I'm clear.
Okay, thank
Just
you.
wanted to make sure I understood.
Okay. Chairman Burke, could you approach and give us your opinion on and your thoughts on the dissertation here that Mr. Hilden has presented and for us this evening? Thank you for attending tonight.
First thing I want to say is a little clarification of where we stand with the CAC. There's nobody in this room more disappointed that this second attempt at the CAC didn't work out again. I worked hard on the new process, and it's a fair process the state recommends. The CAC's main task is to elicit from the citizens information on a new code that's being proposed, which is basically what you asked for. The reason they do CACs is because most people don't like to come to a meeting like this and approach it that, whether it's city council or planning commission. But they will go to their friends and neighbors, and if they've got a problem with an existing ordinance like 203, they will recommend changes or explain what they don't like about it. That's the way the state has set this up, and that's what Dune City did, is try to follow what the state's example was. So the biggest problem with the CAC not doing its work for 5 weeks is it deprived the citizens the opportunity to make suggestions to, or their opinions known on the existing 203 that's been going on in this city for several years now. Again, I was more disappointed than anybody that this didn't work out. They seemed from the get-go to be more interested in their new CAC process that most of them didn't like in the first place. There are times when they'd be allowed to call a meeting at week's notice or 24-hour notice like any other public meeting. They say they didn't have explanations. We explained, and I read your direction to the Planning Commission and the CAC. I read it several times and explained it several times at the appointment meeting. At the end of the appointment meeting, they all agreed that they were ready to go to work. There I was. And then it happens that Fred had a scheduled vacation the following Monday after our Thursday appointment, I believe. And I get calls from staff saying that they've got this email and
Is this the right response to this email? Yeah, that's the right response to the email. So I got a couple of those calls that week. And then the next week, there was more emails and more discussion. I got to explain the Planning Commission's part in this also. Once the Planning Commission appoints the CAC, we don't deal with staff. Staff has a complete list of complete administrative duties of how to operate a CAC. So I'm not going to micromanage the staff and be involved in their communications with the CAC until it involves me. That's their job. That's just the way I feel about it. Where our priority or what we're supposed to be doing with the staff. If the staff calls and says they've got a problem, I'll deal with it. I'll even come back to you with it if that's what the problem is, but that wasn't any of the problems. This proposed changes, we gave them the copies of the 203. And my decision was to give them the copies of 211 and 210 also, because those were the changes that have come to this city as far as septic tank maintenance in the last 3-4 years. So I thought I'd give them to them, and that was for their information. And John said tonight that it was for their information. There was a period in week 3 or week 4 where they were arguing that they shouldn't even be looking at those because they weren't adopted and they weren't 203. They were only supposed to look at 203. They weren't supposed to look at 211 and 210. And about that time, they had their first meeting, and that was week 3 or 4. I'll have to explain also that, well, I'll hold that to later. So that's week 3 or 4, and they decide that they're going to remand it back to us and they want more information. Well, this goes back to what the CAC is supposed to do. The CAC is supposed to involve the citizens of the community at the earliest possible beginnings of an ordinance. So they get input from the citizens at the earliest possible. To me, that doesn't mean we've got written ordinance and we give it to a CAC. That's not that process. The process is if the council wants development on changes to an ordinance, and that's what you asked for. So at the point I responded to the remand, and a letter Fred didn't mention, we sent a letter back to him and I told him to go back to work and review 203. And that was the Planning Commission's answer to their remanding it back to us. After not hearing anything, no response to it, then we decided to have them come to our already scheduled meeting. And we would re-agendize it and notice it. So John and I had this discussion probably 15 minutes. And my first question was, are you ready to start your meetings on 203? This was after I explained and read what had been read at the meeting, the original meeting when they were appointed. The whole problem all along is they didn't like taking direction from the staff, and they didn't, when the staff would tell them, you have everything that there is, they all wanted to argue about the CAC process and what was state law for CAC. And the process is to follow the council's direction. And that in turn is the Planning Commission's task is for the CAC to follow our direction as to how we set up an 8-week period to do this, that they were supposed to be done September 18th. And as late as the other night, John agreed that 8 weeks was plenty of time. He agreed that 8 weeks was plenty of time in the beginning. So, at the point that the same rhetoric back and forth on proposed changes and recommendations on proposed changes, and we don't have any proposed changes, and it was explained to them from the get-go that they were supposed to make the proposed changes following what the city council had asked. So at that point, we were going nowhere. We were in week 5, and it was the planning commission's desire to disband it, take over the CAC as we had done on the last one, and we held a special session with about a week's notice, I guess, advertising for citizens to come and make recommendations to any changes or anything like that, whatever they wanted on 203. So we had that first meeting yesterday, last night, and we're going to have another meeting. We'll have another citizen input on 203 before our regular meeting on the 25th, and if we have exhausted, that will also be advertised in the newspaper, and if we've exhausted what the citizens, any citizens that want to come forward and make recommendations or view their thoughts on 203, the Planning Commission will review 203 and make a recommendation to the City Council, as you had asked. But we aren't going to have an official CAC body because it just wasn't working out. And that's where we're at.
Any questions, Council?
Can we put this on as an agenda item for next month's meeting?
Next month? Yes, yes, we certainly can.
Because I do have a lot of questions and I want to absorb this. Can I ask Mr. Stead a question at this point? I just want to make sure. Mr. Stead, would you mind coming up to the mic?
Sure.
Mr. Stead, I read your letter and I heard what you said, and I read through the minutes of the Planning Commission and I read through the minutes of the CAC. If this council has given direction that the CAC is asked to review Ordinance 203 and come up with recommendations to improve that and provide the Planning Commission with all opinions, whether they're, it's consensus or not, is it still your position as the past chairman that you would not hold a meeting to respond to that direction of this body?
In my letter, I believe, maybe I didn't make it clear. I have a difficult time doing what my committee has asked for. Hey, call a meeting. You don't have the stuff you need from, you don't have a document for us to look at. Get a document from the Planning Commission or someplace so that we have a document to review. If we don't have one, I'm reluctant to call a meeting.
Okay, so let me ask you a question.
Yes.
If we give you an existing ordinance and ask you to review it and make recommendations for improvement, we give you that ordinance, you're saying that's not enough information for you to do that now?
No, I'm saying that is not a problem.
Well, that is my question, Mr. Stead. Do you still are of the opinion that you would not call this body back together to respond to the direction of the Dune City Council?
If we have, and I made this clear to Mr. Burke, if we are instructed to do what the city council asked to be done, we'll do it.
Thank you.
You made it very clear in the motion at the council meeting what you wanted, and we'll do it.
Why wasn't it done then, sir?
Those were not our instructions. The public notice that was posted for everybody twice in the newspaper said something different. It talked in the past tense.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Can we agendize this for next month?
Yes, we certainly can.
And if someone will say, hey, we want the committee to do whatever you said you wanted it to do, if we have instructions that match what you're telling the public by way of the announcement, and by the way, the Planning Commission reviewed that document before it was published. And I heard tonight that the city attorney reviewed that document as well. And we were told by Mr. Hilden and Mr. Burke, and we agreed that this is the first CAC that the city has had, and we are going to do it by the book. We are going to do it right. We were urged to do that. The committee agreed to do that. And what we have before us is a lot of confusion. And I believe if you will listen to the audio of the meetings, you may hear some different things from what are in the minutes. And I'm not quarreling with the minutes. I'm saying that to get a true flavor for the dialogue that went on between myself and Mr. Burke in particular. If you'd hear the audio, you'd have a better appreciation for what was going on in terms of any discussion about helping the CAC. How can we get over this? Is there any way that we can modify this? None of this took place. In fact, the most troubling part of this is that Mr. Burke was overheard before that meeting telling someone that he was going to dismiss the committee. This is before the meeting started. I had that information.
My questions are dealt with specifically my comments, and to talk about anything else I think is inappropriate at this point. I think we're going to have this agendized next month, and I would ask if the council's okay with it, because it'll cost a little more money. Can we get a verbatim transcript of Mr. Burke's comments tonight and Mr. Stead's comments tonight in the minutes?
Tonight?
From tonight's meeting, when you do the minutes, can I get a verbatim of this?
Sure.
Is that okay with the council?
Yeah, that's absolutely fine.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Stead.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor. I'm going to give everyone a chance to comment on, I'm sure you all read it. I'm sure you all heard what's going on. Jamie, do you have comments?
Do you want me to go first? I will, if you want me to. Okay. I too am extraordinarily disappointed that this didn't work out the way I had hoped. I also feel like it's partially my fault because you wanted to send it to ordinance review and I didn't want to do the work because I did it before and it got blown out of the water. And this is how I thought it would not get blown out of the water. But you threw it back at me. You had a chance to do it and you didn't do it. So now I'm embarrassed. And my feeling is perhaps it should not be with Planning Commission either. Perhaps it should go back to the ordinance review. We'll come up with a proposal based on what we tried to do before and then send that to CAC. I mean, that's how I'm feeling, but if planning commission is willing to do it and wants to take it on, I'm okay with that. I'm just saying, it's frustrating. It's frustrating to give what I thought was an opportunity, because there's an individual on that committee who asked us if we would negotiate. Well, this is the chance to negotiate, and it fell apart. Because we're too busy worried about what this word said or what that word said, and I understand the concerns, but if you wanted, if you want a proposal to consider, 211 would be the proposal to consider. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other counselors? Want to comment? No, Duke. Counselor Wells?
Well, I look at the makeup of the appointed people to the CAC. No names, I'm just looking at them here. Those folks, the majority of those folks were against the way we are doing the CAC now. The majority of those folks were against any changes to 203. I believe that was the root of the problem here. I think that Mr. Burke, I think city staff gave the CAC all the appropriate paperwork, information they needed by doing what the council asked to do on the 12th of June, and that was just to review that for proposed changes. I think all you really needed was 203 to look over proposed changes to 203. There weren't any proposed changes for them to look at. It was up to them to give us some proposed changes. Yeah, 203. I commend Planning Commission, Mr. Burke, for seeing and what's going on and what they were experiencing and disbanding the CAC. I think that he was just going to be hitting his head against the wall and wasn't going to get anywhere there. And in the future, our next CAC, I'm going to personally look at who's at the appointment, who's going to be on those cells. I think we need to have people, whatever, I don't say I have the answers to it, but I hope we get a broader spectrum of people rather than the same folks that have concerns over 203 on their side. And that's what I'm seeing here. And I think it caused a real problem. And I think that's what we're experiencing here now.
Okay. Thank you, Councilman.
It just seemed like the ideal opportunity to get some good input from our citizens via the CAC process, and it sounds like, to me, that's been ignored and circumvented, and I think that maybe the solution is to allow the Planning Commission to do the CAC work, because it doesn't sound like the CAC is willing to do the work.
Any comments? No? Yes?
Well, I've got several, but I probably shouldn't make them. Looking at this, part of Fred's presentation tonight, basically this is 203 on one page. So when the CAC said they didn't have the document to work from, I'm confused because 203 is the document to work from. I don't know, I've read over this myriad of minutes and letters, and first I think I understand what went on, and then I get a little confused. But the word semantics came up, and I think maybe there's some desired outcomes that are scattered in there too. So I don't know, I had my reservations about a CAC, but I went along with it because I thought that's what the state says. But I would leave it up to the Planning Commission now. Do they want to reconvene the CAC, or do they just want to do the work? Because I feel like me not being at that meeting, I think I missed something because I don't think it's all in the paperwork here. So, like I say, I still have a certain amount of confusion, but to me, this is the document that the CFC was supposed to work from. And everybody should know this almost by memory because we've been hashing it for years. Thanks.
Do you want to take last?
Yeah.
Where do we go from here? I hope next month's meeting will allow us the opportunity to make the decision on that. I think there's some legal implications here that we need to look at, unfortunately. In leadership roles that I've been into in my life and I've seen in other people, you stand up for your people, and I applaud that, but sometimes you have to stand up to them. And you have to say no. The process that we had asked was to have a review made of 203 and give us input. It was a blank check. What we get now, from what I'm hearing, is, to me, it's obstruction. You satisfy the response of what was wanted by council to give us a review, and then you make a complaint about the process, and then if there's a problem, we'll fix it. But you don't shut down the whole thing. That is something that I'm trying to reconcile that I think is the basis of a legal question that I think our city administrator needs to be in touch with the city attorney about. But I'll be interested in looking at options of where we go from here. Anyway, thank you very much, and I do appreciate the comments of both of you, Mr. Burke and Mr. Stead. I really do.
You know, I concur with Jamie. I concur with Councilor Wells that we as a council, you know, we felt like the timing was right to be proactive with gathering information on how the community can come together and agree and make changes to this 203 ordinance that everyone can live with. And I feel like, you know, so you know, the council, we thought this was the correct process, and in fact, it is the correct process. We're following the state guidelines. It's unfortunate that instruction was misinterpreted. I mean, that's truly unfortunate. When you did the right thing, you asked for clarification, and when clarification was given, that's where everything stopped, right there. It's like, we don't want that answer, we want a different answer. So I don't know what more to do. It was disheartening to read the minutes of that CAC meeting, to how one person basically, in my opinion, sabotaged the work of that committee. And so by doing that, she has prevented the citizens from giving input, because now it's in the past that CAC is disbanded, rightfully so, by the Planning Commission. Thank you for everyone attending and giving input. I think we have a clearer picture of what went on. So now this council will meet, and we're going to agendize this for action next month. And so the way I look at the choices here, we can do nothing, or we can revisit the situation and perhaps, I don't really know. We could go a different direction. So I would charge you all to be thinking about this conversation, and then in particular when we're reading the minutes in the next packet, you know, pay attention, because this is going to be a very important item. I mean, it's certainly within our boundaries to request the Planning Commission to convene a different another CAC. I don't think that, you know, I don't know that that's the right answer. So think about that. I mean, they're going forward with their work, and we have to respect that. They're giving their time to do a job that we've asked them to do, and they're accomplishing it the best way, you know, they know how. And paramount, they're doing it according to the guidelines. So I guess the discussion's over on this topic for this month, and we'll agendize it for, Mr. Burke, you have a final comment?
I need more from, I need more from you than that. We've established at the Planning Commission that we are operating as a CAC for this process. We have ordered, notice has been sent to the paper. And I don't know that they've been sent yet, but they were notified and sent out for Wednesday's meeting. Yes, last night's meeting. So we've already done one meeting to proceed with the CAC process. And notices will be sent out for the meeting for the 25th. I need more from you tonight than until next month.
Okay.
I need to know if you want us to proceed or if you want us to shut it down. I have to have that tonight. I drove an hour and a half over here so I could have that tonight.
Okay, so I understand that. Councilor Mills?
Yes, thank you. I would move to advise the planning commission to move forward on their efforts as serving as the CAC on this issue and to provide us with what we asked for.
I object to the motion because it's not an agendized item for action, and we cannot take action tonight.
Well,
That's right. That's true.
that is true.
I withdraw.
We should withdraw the motion, okay. So, let's think this through, because I understand your need for clarification. The way I look at it, and correct me, you know, if you have a different opinion, by your moving forward, going ahead to agendize, or pardon me, to get those notices out, you're gonna be gathering citizens to come to a meeting to give
Hopefully.
input.
Hopefully we are, yeah.
Okay, so that's a good thing.
Yeah.
And some of those citizens will have probably seen or heard about or read about this meeting. And so perhaps, you know, they would be eager to give their opinion and work, you know, maybe knowing better what the direction is. I don't know. So I don't think it would be fair to say that the work that you're planning to do is wasted. So, you know, any time you're gathering input and proceeding with that topic, I don't think it will go, it's certainly going to be given respect. So did that answer your question?
Yeah, I just don't know that it has to be agendized to either support. The Planning Commission is the CIC. We administer the program. So you're either going to let us administer the program and do it to the best of our ability, or you're going to meet next month and decide whether you're going to or not. I need your backing is what I need, because if I don't have the backing of you, then I can't get any citizens. So you see where I'm at?
Oh, yeah, okay.
How long would it take us to do public notification on this so we can have this in action and have a special meeting, get this done, get Mr. Berkey's his answer as quick as possible?
Oh, you mean like a special
Yeah.
session of the,
Council?
okay?
Yeah.
It would, how long?
I don't believe you need to do that. I don't need you to have an action item.
You just want a consensus of opinion.
All you need to do is agree with what the Planning Commission's decision. Agree to let us keep going. You're not making a decision, you're agreeing to let us keep going with the decisions we've made, that you've given us the authority to make.
Yeah.
So if you agree with the decisions the Planning Commission has made, you don't need to agendize anything, you either agree with it or you don't agree with it. If you don't agree with it, we'll shut her down. If you do agree with it, we'll keep going. I don't believe you need to agendize an item to do that. We've got the authority to do what we've done. If you disagree with what we've done, then you need to agendize it and call us on the map for what, on the floor for what we did. But if you're not gonna do that, if you're gonna let us keep going and keep doing the work, the planning commission needs your support. And I don't think you need to agendize it. You need to say there's no action to be taken. The planning commission is doing their job. There's no action to be taken. That's the answer I'm looking for.
Okay? Councilor Scarpelli?
I agree 100%. The problem tonight is we tried to step in and do something. They're already at CAC. They've already had meetings. So we need to do nothing. We just need to let them do their job
I agree.
and take it through to the end.
Okay.
And we stay out of it.
Nagi? Yes, yes, yes,
Yes.
yes. Councilor Sanders?
As much as I understand what happened, and I agree with you 100% in what you did, and I believe you're 100% right. Being right may not mean we're going to be legally right. And I think it's incumbent upon this body to understand the implications here that require a legal opinion. And I really object to any attempt to have this body take action on an item on the agenda that we were not prepared to take action on.
I'm asking you not to take action and let us do our work.
We're not taking any action, Mr. Burke.
If you agendize it for next month, you're taking action.
I have a responsibility as a counselor, Mr. Burke, to ensure that we're not having unintended consequences such as a lawsuit or a legal remand where $10,000 of the taxpayer money will get thrown away.
I understand
And
that.
I want to make sure that we are on solid footing. Like I said, I agree with you. I empathize with you. I would have done the same thing. But that doesn't make that it would be the right thing to do in regards to the law.
Well,
Review it and go to the lawyer and review it. But don't shut us down tonight.
No action's been taken to shut you down. Nothing.
no, no, correct.
If you're gonna agendize it and rule on it next month, that's action.
Okay, I don't want to argue with you, Mr. Burke.
But that's,
As a counselor, I'm asking the mayor and the council to put this on the agenda. And my intent for doing that is not to give you a yay or nay on what you did, is I want an opportunity to talk to the city administrator, to talk to the city attorney, and get us some information that we need.
I agree with that. I agree with that 100%.
I have no idea where this is going to go.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
It seems like the process has finally started, and it's not a clean way that the CAC was designed to be done, but I think we're gonna get the same information from our constituents by not interfering with what's happening now, because they've had a meeting, they're gonna have another meeting, we're gonna have some input from the citizens, hopefully, and at least we're gonna have the input from the planning commission as to what they think needs to happen, if anything needs to happen. And it probably wouldn't hurt to call our attorney and see if we're in deep trouble or not, but I don't see any reason to stop this process once it's started. I mean, we finally got it started, let it run its course.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Knowles, you have a final, or
Mills or Wells?
Sen Mills?
Thank you. I concur with what Sheldon said. Regardless of what happens, even regardless of what the attorney says, if the planning commission sends to us recommended changes, that will require an ordinance to be drafted. The ordinance will be reviewed. It'll be reviewed by legal counsel. It'll come to us. We will have public hearings, and it will go through that whole public process anyway. So I'm okay. I just was frustrated that I'd done all the work before and it got thrown out the window. And So I just didn't want to do it again, and now it's happening again. I'm frustrated with that. I want this issue resolved.
Okay. Mr. Burke, do you have the answer you need?
We will move on.
Thank you. Okay?
I've got your attention. I got a couple of things. Just to clarify what's going on with me.
Oh,
I have accepted an offer on my house. It was supposed to close September 3rd. I heard Jamie talking about it.
yeah.
I told them at ordinance review that it was going to be over 3rd. We've extended that closing date to October 3rd.
Oh,
At that point, when my house closes, I am going to resign from Planning Commission, Ordinance Review, Budget Committee, all of the jobs I've got. And the Planning Commission has already agreed to, I don't know if the word is hire, but hire me for no pay as a consultant. And I'm going to continue on the Planning Commission until we get 155 through the City Council and adopt. So I'll be the spokesman for the Planning Commission, taking that through the City Council,
okay.
however long it takes.
Wow.
There's another item that came up recently, and I would like the council, I'm suggesting the council authorize city administrator to get with legal and find out if we can do a franchise for, like we do garbage trucks, a franchise for pumping, inspecting, servicing. Our only utility is our septic tank system to protect our lakes. There's been talk through the last 5, 6, 7 years of people getting extraordinary bills for doing the work that people have done. And I know the prices have gone up. And I know I had a terrible experience 3 weeks ago trying to get mine done. There's a definite misunderstanding between the city rules and the servicers in this area. And I suggest that you have Fred get with the attorney and see if other cities possibly, or see if it's legal to set up a franchise for this service that the city is mandating. At that point, the city can negotiate prices that are more reasonable than what people are being charged.
True.
That's a suggestion. I think it's a start, and I think it's going to help the whole situation around 203 or what we do in the future as far as pumping and inspecting. It's a suggestion.
Okay. Thank you. Very good one.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming over. Okay. For the good of the order,
I'm thrilled to see that we don't have a birthday celebration this month, so I'm assuming that no one got older.
okay, no cake. Councilor Wells?
I'm looking forward to reviewing all this stuff on this, the CAC.
Okay, thank you.
Planning Commission. Road Commission.
Road Commission?
We're starting our identifying the street project, maintenance projects for 2015. We're going to start that, and hopefully we'll be able to do the same thing we did this year, is get everything done and bid so that the projects can start July 1st when the weather's optimal. And there's a couple of things that are on the radar for those. If any counselor, or member of the public, or member of the community has any ideas, please get them to me, and I'll bring it before the commission. The item I wanted to bring up is, I had the experience of not being in this lovely community in August, but I had to be down in the state south of us. And at 3 o'clock in one morning, about 15 miles from downtown Napa, I got woken up with that violent earthquake. It had been a long time, about 20 years since I'd been in a 6.0 plus earthquake, and it got my attention. And at the house I was at, we only lost some glasses. It was minor. But what happened in Napa is something that this city can look at, Florence can look at, Wheelock can look at. Most of the injuries in Napa were caused by trailers on the pier blocks like you see in trailer parks. And what I understood down there in that state south of us, that their laws, they require that these mobile homes be strapped down and tied down if they're going to be purchased and financed. Other than that, they're not required. To me, in the news, there were people that were injured because of that, not having them strapped down. And I think that is a lesson learned. And I throw it out, maybe it can go to WELOG. Maybe we can look at ordinances to require, if we have things like that, that we can at least educate people to get them strapped down, because when you're being shifted around, you know, roughly 2 to 3 feet, these things just come off those pier blocks.
Wow.
So it was a good experience. I don't want to go through another one for another 20 years, but I'll just leave it at that. Fred, if you can decide what you want to do with it, that's just my suggestion.
Okay.
I think, you know, being employed by an institution that does lending, that everything is like required to have a perimeter foundation. So I really don't know.
These are unfinanced. These are, you go in and pay, you know, $3,000 and you get yourself a single wall.
Okay.
Yeah, the new building code requirements already require
Pier
tie downs.
post, tie downs.
Tie downs on pier blocks.
Okay.
Don't require tie downs on foundations. If they choose to put in a peripheral foundation, there's no requirement for tie downs.
Okay.
But if they use pier blocks, they are required to be tied down, and that's current Oregon building code.
Okay.
But that doesn't require current structures that exist without them to do it.
Bingo.
Yeah, and you're probably never going to go there.
Just understand that if we have an earthquake.
I think it's good to have an education program.
Right, right.
If we have an earthquake, we'll probably have some injuries, and that'll be the cause of the factor.
That'd be something good for my newsletter come November.
Yeah, that'd be great. You can write the article.
That's even better.
All right, move on. Councilor Mills?
On that order, Fred, do you know if the Emergency Preparedness Expo at Greenpeace is open to the public? I got an email this afternoon that kind
It
of
is.
sounded like it was.
Yeah, in fact, I meant to mention that tonight.
I know, it was in your report.
It is open to the public, and it should be a pretty good show.
And that's Saturday. Do you know?
I believe it's,
9 a.m., 10 a.m.?
I want to say 10 to 3.
Oh, sounds good. And they're serving food.
Right.
Oh. Councilor?
Good in the order?
Yes, good in the order.
Well, having been here for nearly 30 years now, I continually am impressed with the time given and devotion and emotion and the people in this community and all the effort they do. Though we don't agree all the time, at least it keeps us in a narrow way. And I can look at not only the people that are here, but people throughout the community. And that's what makes Dune City different. It makes Florence different. And I think that let's try not to lose sight of the fact that we're all on the same team, and we need to remember that and cooperate and continue to use our time, efforts, and our intelligence, our gifts to further the city.
Thank you, well said. All that.
Go ahead.
I'm about sewaged and septic tanked out, but a month ago, well, many months ago, the topic was brought up about the park spreading treated sewage. Over the past couple months, I've ridden by that area, I think it's right there between the first and second bridge on the north side of the road, twice on my motorcycle, once with in my truck with the window down, and smelled raw sewage. And, you know, I didn't stop then, but it was right at that spot. I stopped there this morning on the way home. There was no smell, but there is a sign in there talking about sewage. I would like to get some definitive information from the park. What is going on there? I mean, if we're spending all this stress and hassle trying to keep the lake clean, but if something is being spread that close to the body of water, I'd like to know.
Okay.
Because it's a definite sewage smell at different times.
Well, yes. I attempted to call the parks. I don't even recall who I spoke with, but they just kind of passed me to another person, and the right person wasn't there. And after two tries, I became disenchanted with it, and I thought, well, they don't want to talk to us because they were starting to be defensive. And I did not want to get into, you know, any kind of a spitting match with words. And so I just kind of dropped it and then forgot about it. And so you're bringing it up again, kind of, why don't we just instruct our city official to contact them officially and see if they can come and talk about it? Maybe they won't want to.
Well, I don't even care if they come
Maybe
and
it's
talk
a
about
really
it.
great deal. I don't know.
I mean, I would just like to know, what is it? I mean,
I'd like to hear them
If
talk
I-
about it.
if I smelled a smell like that coming from my neighbor, I'd get real suspicious. But when you're driving by the county road, by the lakes, and you go by this certain spot, and you smell that crappy smell, and they've got a sign there that talks about sewage, something's going on.
Well, I was referred by someone when I spoke with them over there that there was an intergovernmental type agreement or something that they're following that says it's okay.
I've heard that rumor that there's an intergovernmental agreement between Lane County and the park.
Parks. So let's see what that is.
I think it would be a good idea to inquire and see if they're willing to come make a presentation to council about that.
That'd be awesome. Just, you know, education, be informed, you know, be transparent with what you're doing. We won't beat them up or anything. It's getting late. Okay, for the good of the order. Thank you, Counselor. Let's take care of that. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved. Second?
I'll second.
Okay, it's 9:56. Oh.